already told you. If a project gets delayed, actually it brings in a new set of problems to the project, right? New set of completely new set of problems. Therefore, okay, problems may be of nature like unavailability of materials or unavailability of some other resources because of changes in your planning. According to that, maybe there will be some change in the rules and regulation. I'm talking about some big projects. Suppose you have got the license and everything is in place, but it get delayed. In the meantime, something has changed. Maybe a new government came in, maybe some changes in the world order. Maybe you got short supply of some materials for your project. So there are many such issues or problems may happen. So it is always advisable to complete the project as per your plan, right? So that is the norm. So in order to do that, you have to have a proper schedule at place. Okay, so there is time management. Easy to group all subtasks under main task. Easy to check the project. Okay, so this is also interesting. I also explained a bit about this. Easy to check the project status, right? So once you have constructed your Gantt chart, right, then on any particular day during the implementation, you can pick up the Gantt chart and you can see where I am standing now, or where the time is now for the on that particular day. You can see what is the status of your project with respect to what is the status is there on the Gantt chart. So easily you can compare, right, whether you are ahead of time or you are behind the schedule, whatever the case may be. So at least you can introspect, you can analyze, and you can see how to expedite the activities if you are behind the schedule, or if you are ahead of the schedule, then how to best utilize that time that you have completed the task earlier. Maybe you can add in some other things. So that gives a very useful tool for you. Can see the completed percentage of tasks. As I said, on a particular day, you can check what percentage of the work is completed actually, means on reality, and what percentage is there on your Gantt chart. So whether they are matching or not. So task in progress and pending work is clearly visible. Helps the managers to easily coordinate with the teams. Gantt chart is good tool for presenting the team meetings. Right, as I said, in meetings, review meetings, board meetings. Suppose as a project manager, you have to face the meetings, board meetings, review meetings from time to time, and this Gantt chart will be a very useful tool with you, so that you can put in that, okay, look, this is the Gantt chart, this is the project schedule we are following, and at present we are in this stage, right? So you can make a good point on that. So these are the advantages. Now coming to some of the disadvantages of Gantt chart, in fact some limitations. Also yesterday I told you about some limitations, like the main limitation is that it is static in nature, right? The main means, if you ask me what is the demerit, it is static in nature, in the sense once you have constructed it, it becomes somewhat very fixed, rigid. And but in real life, in real projects, it is not going to static. It is going to change with time. So that's the dynamic nature of projects. So in reality, the projects are dynamic. That means whatever time you have estimated for the project's activities may not be exactly be true. Maybe some activities will get delayed. Some may be completed earlier also. So whatever the case may be. But how to incorporate that in the Gantt chart, right? So if you have understood that how to construct a Gantt chart, you can yourself now accept it that by changing the duration of any one activity, that may affect all the subsequent activities, right? The bars have to be shifted, they have to be sometimes extended, sometimes erased, and all that. So practically in a Gantt chart, it is very difficult to incorporate that. So that way it is a disadvantage. Otherwise, if your project is going on as per your plans, means as per your estimated times, then maybe it is a bit useful. So that is the main disadvantage. Other than that, the disadvantages, like if the project is very complex, let us say, it contains say more than 100 activities, then you can say that preparing a Gantt chart for 100 activities and trying to understand the things will be a bit clumsy in that sense. So maybe for limited activities like completion of a project, like preparing for maybe some event or maybe some college institute level activities, or maybe very small projects which contains 10-20 activities, then for that Gantt chart is okay. But for complicated complex projects, maybe Gantt chart is not preferable because it will become very lengthy and it is not that easy to read it. Okay, so these are the basic things which are decided limitations. They can become extraordinarily complex, of course, when there is the project itself is complex. There is another thing, the length of the bar does not indicate the amount of work. Okay, so now try to understand what is the meaning of the second point here. Now in the Gantt chart, you are writing, you are representing the time scale, right? You are only using a time scale. Suppose some activity is taking 2 weeks, right? So you will use 2 units of your graph paper or your scale that you have used. But does that 2 units represent the quantum of work that 2 weeks contain? No, it is just representing some time. Of course, this point is also valid for all other methods that are applicable for project scheduling. It is not only for Gantt chart. No project scheduling tool which are used for time management represent the quantum of work. So when I'm saying quantum of work, it may be the number of machines or number of manpower which are used maybe within that 2 weeks, right? So it is not reflected in your project scheduling diagram. What is the quantum of work? Maybe in that 2 weeks, comparing to another activity which is taking 4 weeks, right? Maybe within that 2 weeks, you are spending twice or thrice of the amount that you are spending in another activity which is taking 4 weeks, right? Because the quantum of work is more. The nature of resources utilized is more, right? So it is not reflected. It is just representing a kind of time that you want. It's not quantum of work. So there is one disadvantage. They need to be constantly updated if some activities are there. This I always emphasize upon. That's the biggest limitation of Gantt chart. If some activities are getting delayed, then how to make that change in Gantt chart? It will be very difficult for you, right? You just see if some activity is getting delayed, you have to extend it, right? You have to extend it. So when you are extending one activity, maybe another 2-3 activities will get affected, right? The subsequents which are depending on that. So ultimately it will become useless for you to interpret and use from time to time. So that is one of the disadvantages. If project is large and with many stakeholders, it is going to be challenging to keep the Gantt chart updated. So that is also taken. Right? If the project is large, it contains many activities, right? And there are involvement of many stakeholders, right? When there is involvement of many stakeholders, right? Suppose many of your activities are subcontracted, right? And the subcontracted work itself is a small project, right? You try to understand what I'm saying. Although you have divided your project into, as per the WBS, that is the work breakdown structure, into some activities, but maybe some of the activities which you have clubbed and given to some other agency as a third party subcontract work is a project for that third party company, right? Now how to incorporate these things, because they're the other stakeholders. Even there can be more than one outsourced work from your project. Yeah, in large projects, it may happen that you have many activities are being subcontracted, right? So how to incorporate that in your Gantt chart when there is third parties, more than one third parties are involved, and you do not know that how they are planning, what is their schedule, and all that. So in that case, maybe Gantt chart has got the limitation. Gantt charts are also disadvantages whenever they are seen as immutable, because project requirements may change over time and because project managers must be able to adapt to the situation and circumstance. The Gantt chart should be seen only as an outline that can be changed as project needs change. So as I said, it is similar to your earlier point, which is about static nature. So you cannot assume that the Gantt chart is immutable, means something which is very absolute, means it is going to happen as it is. No, you cannot say, because there are many uncertainties in it, right? You have to adapt with the time, right? You have to make it dynamic, but it is not possible to make a Gantt chart to be dynamic, right? Because as you know, you have to make changes physically in the Gantt chart, and that creates all the problems. For example, if during the project completion phase an issue is brought that requires problem solving, flexible project managers can add to the project timeline and update the Gantt chart. Okay, some situation may be like this happen, that you need to change some activity because that activity is taking more time. So that flexibility is not there in your Gantt chart, so that you can make any changes in it. All right. So with this, okay, there is another 2 points. Let me see. Gantt charts are a disadvantages whenever much information needs to be depicted for a complex project. So these are usually not suitable for complex projects, right? For complex projects, you may go for network analysis, not the Gantt charts. But yes, Gantt chart can be, as I said, is a very easily constructed, graphical, visually convenient kind of tool, right? Just it can give you some idea about the outline of your works, right? But it is more likely that after some time of the implementation of the project, it may become irrelevant. The reason is that the things are not happening as per your plan. Of course, there are many considerations which we'll see when we'll go for the network analysis. Many considerations like when to relax for some activity, when to ramp up some of the activities. So these things are not possible in case of Gantt chart compared to a network analysis. In network analysis, the project manager gets some idea that what is the relaxation you have for some activities in terms of some time units, which you can intentionally delayed without affecting the project completion time also. So that is also possible in case of network analysis. Okay, so these are some advantages and disadvantages. So let us begin the network analysis for today. Let me see how many students are present. Okay, 60. Fair enough. So project network analysis or project network diagram is a kind of tool which is a kind of, I will say, a combination of graphical as well as computational technique, which helps the project manager to plan for the project schedules properly, right? There are various sign conventions, various means which are used for this. We have to understand all the sign conventions and the differences, and of course, what are the computations, calculations that are involved in it very carefully. As I said, this is a portion of your subject, project management, which is a bit numerical in nature. You have to solve some of these problems which are in network analysis topic. Okay, so network diagrams are the preferred technique for showing activity sequencing. A network diagram is a schematic display of the logical relationships among or sequencing of project activities. So we already know we have broken down the whole project into some activities. That is an n number of activities, right? We are not able to break them further, right? Because that is the distinct activities, and as per WBS, we have divided into n number of activities. Now these n number of activities, then you have to establish some kind of relationships right? Precedence relationships or dependency among these activities, right? That we have seen in this Gantt chart example also. So these are based on the technical requirements, that which activities to be performed first, followed by which one, things like that. So based on that, now we are free to construct a network diagram, right, instead of a Gantt chart for the same purpose, that is the project scheduling. Right? The objective is same and the tools are different, right? So all those relationships, precedence relationship, or you call it dependency, or the sequencing of these activities, we have to utilize during the network diagram analysis, right? But we cannot adopt any way of constructing this network. It has to be standardized. So we have to understand what are the sign conventions or standard practices to construct a network diagram, so that any network diagram that you have understood here may be understood by anyone who is not I mean, from any part of the world, he should understand that, okay, this is the network diagram. So there should be some sign conventions. So those things we have to discuss first. Two main formats are the arrow and precedence diagramming methods. Okay, there are two main approaches for construction of this network diagram. Yes, these are the two types of network diagrams you will find which are in practice. Number one is activity on arrow, AOA insert, or it is also sometimes called arrow diagramming method. The second one is not that popular, but yes, you can know it. But it is known as activity on arrow, right? And the second method is activity on node, AON insert, or of course it is also called PDM, precedence diagramming method, right? But mostly they are called AOA or AON, activity on arrow, activity on node. Now see the basic difference. From the name itself you can also guess. See, we have some activities, n number of activities in a project. Now when we are constructing this network diagram, you have two options. Either you represent these activities as arrows, right, arrow, or you can represent these activities as a node. Node means, as per this graph theory, maybe knowing, so maybe a circle, maybe a square, but from where this arrow is starting or ending, that is a node, right? So you can put to the, or you can represent an arrow as an activity. That is one method. And the second method is activity as a node, as a circle or as a square or a rectangle, whatever. That is a node you can use in your figure. So whenever you will construct it, you have to first assume or mention that this is an activity network diagram which is following AOA or AON, right? Now see how we'll proceed here, right? We'll discuss both these methods, right? We'll discuss both these methods because both are prevalent, both are useful. In fact, the software which are used for project management, like MS Project, or there are many other project softwares are there, scheduling softwares are there. They make use of the second one, that is activity on node type calculations in that. So for that purpose, we'll make use of both. But most of the examples in books and other sources, you will find activity on an arrow is I found personally is more popular or prevalent. Anyway, I will explain both the things, but I will request all of you to not to mix up both of them, right? That creates a lot of problem. So what we'll do, somehow we have to keep ourselves separate for some time. Means maybe we'll first focus on activity and arrow for some time, right? Once you'll get conversant with the activity and arrow kind of thing, then we'll go for activity and node, right? Then it will be easy for you to switch over once you have understood activity on arrow. So I will take care, means I will take best possible care from my side and not to mix up both of them, because from my experience I know it becomes a kind of hodgepodge situation when both the methods are studied together. So these are two methods. Now let us see some of the interpretations. Of course, now I am focusing on activity on arrow kind of notations and all that, right? So for that, here in this figure, there are 4 situations are shown ABCD, and now you can assume that wherever you are finding some arrow, that is nothing but an activity, right? And these circles just represent maybe the start of the activity and the end of the activity, right? You may call that as some events, right? Events means which is a particular state of the system at a particular time, that is event. This thing happened means instantly it happened. And activity is a kind of continuous process which is consuming resources and is taking time, right? There is activity means some. Okay, so these arrows here all represent activities of the project, and the circles are just the nodes. Nodes means suppose for example, let me pick the first point, that is A. So activity A here may be digging up the foundation, right? Digging up the foundation is an activity, right? So the node from which it starts may be interpreted as starting the digging of the foundation. Start of digging of the foundation means that just a state, just an event, right? That is an event. Means you have, suppose you have started your construction work, means just give the green signal and there is some kind of some activity, something like for some puja you have done, and start of the digging of the foundation. That is the first node you can understand. Then the next node where this activity A is merging or meeting is end of the digging of the foundation. If you want to interpret that circle, that is end. So start and end, just that is the nodes. Whereas the arrow represents the continuous process, digging of the foundation, whatever time it took, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever. Similarly, for all the activities. So during the construction of this network diagram, we have to take care of these things. And the rule is that, perhaps I told you sometime earlier, that we have to move from the left towards the right. You can see in all these figures, right? We are moving from the left towards the right as you progress in the project, not the other way. So this is a sign convention we have to follow. Now let us just, they are very simple things, but let me read out for you so that you can understand what is the meaning of these notations. For example, the first bullet, A. Activity B can be performed only after completing activity A. So from this figure, the meaning is that you can start B once activity A is completed, because the B is starting from the node at which the A is meeting. तो B तभी start हो सकता है जब activity A खत्म होगा, ठीक है? You have to understand that. Similarly, C can only start when activity B is completed, because C starts from the node to which the B is meeting, right? Similarly, the second part, that is B, activity B and C can start simultaneously only after completing A. So this is the interpretation of this figure. You can see both B and C are emerging from a node to which activity A is meeting, right? That means after completion of activity A, you can start B and C simultaneously, this way. Similarly, in C, what you can interpret? Anybody? Please speak. Can anyone explain what is point C? Okay, it is mentioned there in the right. That's why you are not saying. Good. So in point C, you can see that activity C can only start when activity A and B are finished. In D, there is some complication, isn't it? So what you are finding? You can see a dotted line here in activity. Can you see a dotted line in D? So there is a dotted line. So a dotted line is a thing you have to understand in this construction. Dotted line is called a dummy activity. Dummy, you know. Dummy means which is physically not present, but virtually it is present. That is a dummy person, dummy activity. So during the construction of this network, this concept of dummy activity, we have to make use of for certain situations like this. And you have to, and that also creates some problems that how to utilize these dummy activities. So, see, for this, listen to me carefully for this point D. If we'll forget this dummy activity, suppose this dummy activity is not there, right? If this dummy activity is not there, then what will happen? You can only say that activity C can start after the completion of activity A. If the dummy activity is not there, if the dotted line is not there, that means C can start only after completion of activity A, right? But maybe in practice or in the real project, C can only start after the completion of A and B. Look at the figure. Suppose you want to represent that C can only start after the completion of A and B. Okay. But D, activity D can only start after the completion of only activity B. So this is the real situation. So how to represent it? अगर आप ये सोचेंगे कि A और B को हम एक ही नोड में मीट करा देंगे, ठीक है, तो डमी का प्रॉब्लम नहीं रहेगा. तो C कैन स्टार्ट आफ्टर A एंड B, वो तो ठीक है, बट देयर विल बी अ प्रॉब्लम कि उसका ये भी मीनिंग निकल जाएगा कि D कैन ओनली स्टार्ट आफ्टर द कंप्लीशन ऑफ A एंड B, जो कि आप नहीं चाह रहे हो. आपका ये सिचुएशन है कि D कैन ओनली स्टार्ट आफ्टर द कंप्लीशन ऑफ B, ओनली B. तो ऐसे सिचुएशन आता है जहां पे हम एक डमी एक्टिविटी यूज करते हैं. ऑल ऑफ यू अंडरस्टैंड हिंदी? I hope. Is there anyone who is not able to understand Hindi? ऐसा कोई नहीं होगा, है क्या कोई? नहीं है, ठीक है. बिकॉज ये जो पर्सन है, पर्टिकुलरली दिस नेटवर्क एनालिसिस, इसमें थोड़ा हमको भी आई प्रिफर मे बी सम पर्सन्स टू एक्सप्लेन इन हिंदी रादर देन इंग्लिश, क्योंकि इंग्लिश कभी कभी बहुत उल्टा कर जाता है. एनीवे, तो यहाँ पे हम वही कह रहे हैं कि समटाइम्स वी हैव टू मेक यूज ऑफ डी, आई मीन a dummy activity, just to satisfy our requirements. तो यहाँ पे जो ये जो डमी एक्टिविटी दिया गया है डॉटेड लाइन, यू कैन सी इसका कोई नेम नहीं दिया गया है, नहीं, जैसे ABCD है बाकी एक्टिविटीज, डमी का कोई नेम नहीं दिया गया है. खैर कोई नेम भी दे सकते हो, बट यू हैव टू अंडरस्टैंड इफ इट इज अ डॉटेड लाइन कि इट इज नॉट physically there is no such activity, but it is just to satisfy a kind of dependency or a kind of precedence relationship, just to satisfy the norms or the regulations of constructing a network diagram. We are using it. It is neither consuming any resources or nor any time. The time consumed is zero, right? Is it somewhat clear to all of you, dummy activity? Of course, I will discuss it later. Many times these dummy things will come. Is it clear? Have you understood what is dummy activity? Okay. You don't like to say yes, right? Okay, so I'll stop here, and do you have any questions? Then you can ask, or I will end this meeting for today.